when God sends two men down, and the engine is the Holy Spirit, and we're on track. We're literally on track, and Tom and I are co-investigating the same subject matter. Obviously, the title of our new DVD series is The Unholy Sea. When you are through with tonight, you're going to see something that is so strange and what I say, wonderfully laid out of God knowing the end from the beginning. And so, Tom, I thank you for that, but that's my sentiment, too. After 25 years on talk radio and being told this and told that and accused this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I shared this with Tom. I think it was 23 or 24 years ago. I'll have to check with Hawk. He remembers just about every one of my shows. I said, you're going to watch Islam and Catholicism merge. You're also going to watch the greatest war in the Catholic Church. I'm not talking about a war of words. I'm talking a shooting war. You're going to watch that take place. Well, Tom, you know how that went over. You know,
well,
I'm crazy. I'm insane. You know,
yeah,
but then you know, and the deal is that there's no way I could have known that any more than you were directed, and Chris was used by the Lord. You guys are doing the same thing at the same time. God gave you that. So we're now at a position, because you know this, everybody basically has been the standard, the 10 hills of Rome, the Holy Roman Empire, and Ben, that's not what you're saying or seeing, or that's not what I'm saying or seeing either. So go ahead and proceed. But I just want you to know that I find it interesting, and I said this to my wife. I said 23 years ago, I was talking about it. Fast forward, and tonight, Tom and I are talking about the fulfillment of that. Now, is that cool or what?
Yeah, and hundreds of years ago, the Cumae Sibyl was talking about it, and this Pope and the Vatican today are behaving in a way that they believe it, and they're working to make it happen, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Now, one thing you failed to say, and let me say it, Steve, is that our investigation. People think that because you and I are good friends and we go back for a long time in radio that we talk all the time and we always check with each other about what our and we never do that. We never talk about what our investigations are, what we're working on, and yet time after time, like your new documentary film, is absolutely a parallel to the work that Chris and I have been doing in secrecy for the last year on the final Roman emperor. And I want to really pitch your documentary film. From the people that have seen it, they say that it's one of the best. It is the best thing that you've ever produced. One of the best things ever produced on the subject matter, and is extraordinarily well done. So I was humbled to get to be a small part of that, in which we were actually talking about the second year of me and Putnam's investigation, which actually even then happened as a result of me being on radio with you. So, and recall, Steve, how after we accurately stated what we said we believe is going to happen with Pope, there was another thing that was going on with the Vatican, and that is it had its top astronomers out there talking about astrobiology, and in specifically, they were saying some very loaded things. They were saying it's more likely than not that advanced extraterrestrial intelligence exists elsewhere in the universe. Furthermore, Gabriel Jose Funes, who was the head of the Vatican Observatory Research Group at that time and the top Catholic for the Vatican, he was out there saying, I would baptize the aliens into the Catholic faith if they were to visit the Earth. Guy Consolmagno, who at that time was the Pope's personal astronomer and has since taken Jose Funes' place as the head of the Vatican Observatory Research Group, he too was saying we would baptize aliens into the Catholic faith. But then suddenly something started changing, and this was why people started calling the shows we were doing, Steve. They started saying not only would it not be against Catholic faith to believe in extraterrestrial intelligence, but they said actually the heresy would be not to believe in advanced extraterrestrial intelligence because that would put limits on God's creative ability. And then from there, they ratcheted it up to an even more mysterious place where they started saying, and furthermore, there is a point in the near future, by the way, Tanzella Niti, who is an Opus Dei level bishop or priest in the Vatican who writes a lot of their doctrine and works at the Pope's university in Rome, said that soon we could be faced with information from an extraterrestrial source that might require us to have to reread and alter everything we've ever thought we knew about the gospel. Well, why in the world would he make such an extraordinary statement? Because they believe that extraterrestrial intelligence exists. Now, why do they believe that? Well, that's another mystery, maybe or maybe not. We'll get into that tonight. We went deeply into that in book number 2 in this 4-year investigation called Exo Vaticana. But they say that these aliens are more likely to be morally superior to us. And what they mean by that is that what we know about ourselves is that we are fallen, the fall of Adam, right, and Eve. We are fallen, but these aliens, maybe they didn't fall. And if they didn't fall, then they're closer to God than we are. They have a better understanding of the union of God and of the triune Godhead and whatever than what we do. And therefore, they said, it may not be us baptizing them into our faith when they come here, but rather it's going to be them baptizing us into their faith, into a perfected understanding of the gospel. So stuff started getting really weird around the time that Benedict stepped down. And so when we were doing shows with you, Steve, and others, people were calling in and they were emailing us and they were saying, man, what do you guys make of what the Vatican is out there saying right now about aliens and they're morally superior and they're more likely than not to exist and blah, blah, blah. They're our space brothers. And Steve and I knew, Chris and I knew that if we were really going to get to the bottom line and get an authoritative answer and not just come across as a couple of evangelicals taking cheap shots at the Vatican, the way we were going to have to do that is we were going to have to go to the top of Mount Graham in Arizona, where the Vatican has an advanced technology telescope, and they're also part of the Mount Graham Observatory group. There's 3 telescopes up there. I'm not going to go into all that, but bottom line was I negotiated this through the Arizona State University. If somebody wants a blow-by-blow and all the information, they can get the massive, it was our best-selling book of all time, get the massive book, Exo Vaticana. It is extraordinarily well-researched, hundreds and hundreds of footnotes. We knew we had to cross every T and dot every I, right, on everything that we were saying. Chuck Missler said it's the best book ever written on the subject of astrobiology from a conservative Christian worldview. But we went to the top of Mount Graham. I got this set up. We went up there. We met with the Jesuit who was on duty that day. They allowed us to walk all over the Vatican Telescope to see everything there. We went to the radio telescope. We ultimately wound up on the top of that mountain at the large binocular telescope. That's the largest binocular telescope in the world, where the Lucifer Device is at. We were shown the Lucifer Device, and that's a piece of infrared technology that we believe is allowing them to monitor something that is approaching the Earth based on some things that Malachi Martin had said in 2009, and which we verified with the Jesuit who was on duty there that day. Anyway, bottom line, that was the second book, but it wasn't until we came down off of Mount Graham that we really were made to understand what was happening with that mountain, and the fact that the Apaches, who had resisted the Vatican, actually joined environmentalists in Arizona to fight the Vatican and Arizona State University and NASA to try to keep them from building an observatory on the top of that mountain. It wasn't until we came off the mountain that we learned why the Apaches wanted to fight them, and it was because they consider Mount Graham to be what you and I, Steve, would call a stargate, a doorway, a portal.